As I look around, I see elkhorn, moose horn, mule deer, deer, everything in the world. You've even got some really exotic stuff over there.
Different bones and horns and antlers. I cut a lot of them up and use them in my handles.
To make knives.
Right, I cut them up and use them in my knife handle material.
What makes a good knife as opposed to a cheap knife made in China?
The China markets, you know, they're throwing these cheap knives in here, and they're not for everybody. Some people buy them and they don't care. I mean, you know, like I say, they can use them one time and throw them away. Well, it's just $5, you know. In order to make a good knife, you have to have the steels that we produce in this country today that's got the alloys and the carbons, and they've got to be properly heat treated, which you're talking a more expensive steel. We can't spend the money that we spend on steel and turn around and sell a $5 knife.
How you come to get the shape of the knife?
Basically what you do is you get your template and your pattern of whichever one you've got, and you'll pick your particular steel out that you're going to use, and you draw your template over your pattern and draw it out, and you take it over here to the grinders and get your profile done. And then basically it's ready to start grinding once you get it down into the shape of your profile where you want it.
So those are the basic shape of your knife.
That's the
all you
basic
did
shape.
was took a little marker and drew the outline from your template there, and there you go. You got the basic shape of a knife. Now that's all you've done. Now what's the next step?
Once I get my profile out on my blade and I've got it where I want it, I try to get in here and give an idea of where my handles is going to lay, and then of course where I'm going to hollow ground my blade. I do a hollow ground, which is a stock removal method of knife making. You're removing what you don't want. I'm a freehand grinder. I mean, I don't use no jigs or nothing. I just hold it with my hands. I'll grind everything into this double line and get it ready for the heat treat oven.
How in the world did you get possessed to do something like this? When did you make your first knife?
I had a metal shop teacher in the early 70s, Mr. Bill Ball, and he let 2 or 3 of us young guys make us some knives because we hunted, and he put a bug in me that's put me right here today. I'm sure today we have no shop classes. If we did, I knew we wouldn't be making knives. But he let me make my first one in 1972, and I still got it. And I used it many a year.
And I think you're heating up the oven right now to what's the temperature you have to?
We're going to use a blade today at about 1450 in the oven there. I've got one here that's totally ready to put in. And I've done my hollow ground, I've stamped my name in it, I've done all my holes that I want in it for my handle materials. I also do a stock reduction, take some of the lightness out of it. I drill just a constant bunch of holes. This knife here will be run up to about 1450 degrees, and what we'll do is when that gets to the point where a magnet won't pick it up, it's ready to quench in the oil.
Now what do you mean when a magnet won't pick it up?
When a magnet don't pick it up, it's non-magnetic, of course, and that's when all the molecules and everything's lined up in that knife, and you got that thing back to a pure steel where everything's lined up. You're quenching it in the oil, and all the alloys that we have in this steel are all going to come back up to their hardness point of their maximum point of hardness. When we bring it out of here, the first thing we're going to do is check for straightness. All right, that blade's good and straight, so we're going to do our quench in our oil.
Now you say that's olive oil.
It has a higher flash point because some of these steels I use run up to 1900 degrees. Your blade is basically finished except for cleaning it up.
How the handles go on?
Well, once you finish a blade and you get it all cleaned up and you get the finish on the blade that you want, you start pinning everything together, and of course you epoxy. We use epoxy on our pins and everything, and you clamp everything together for about 6 hours and let it all set up, and then you can actually come back on the grinders over here again, and you're going to start shaping all this bone to the profile of the handle that you had to start with. They're one-of-a-kind pieces, and they're going to run more money, but they're basically one-of-a-kind pieces because I very rarely do 2 that look alike. Knives that you talked about being where they won't hold an edge and they're $5, I think it's kind of tending a lot of people to lean more toward handmade knives today because they know the quality's not there in that $5 knife. And a person that uses knives a lot in the field or in their work or whatever, they're seeking out these better made knives today. So it's actually helping, I think, the handmade market.
For a knife, a good utility work knife, how long should that last a fellow?
Well, you take this knife right here, and I'm sure we could use it the rest of our life and hopefully pass it on to our kids and they can use it. I mean, you know, and there again, it depends on the use and whether you abuse a knife or not. I mean, because some people just abuse, they're not made for screwdrivers. But you should be able to take a handmade knife if it's properly heat treated, and you shouldn't have no problem field dressing your deer, skinning your deer, and processing your deer out, and you shouldn't have to touch the edge. It don't hurt to touch a knife up today, the ones that we make. Every time you use it and get done with the deer, touch it up a little bit, keep that edge honed on there, and it's gonna last a whole lot longer. If you just keep going and going and going, eventually you're gonna start rounding your edge off. It's gonna be a little bit harder to sharpen. So I try to tell guys to keep it touched up. It's not how long you can go with it. Keep it touched up and it will go and go and go a lot longer. But if you keep a knife and you keep it cleaned up and you sharpen it right and everything, a knife will last years and years. You know, I mean, I've got knives that belong to my fathers, and I'm sure you do. And but it's a tool, and they have to be taken care of, just like your guns and everything else, and pass them on down to your kids, hopefully.